What up, what up, what up? Welcome to another episode of New Orleans Basketball and New Orleans Network podcast. As always, I am your host, Raphael Rattler, joined by my fellow brother, Garrick G Money Rattler. What's popping with you, bro?
Yeah, you can do that again. You can say that again. Man, I'm all good. I stayed up late last night, man. I stayed up late last night. First of all, let's get it out the way. Abolish West Coast teams so that we can abolish West Coast tip-offs. Let me tell you something. As a recently crossed the 30-year-old bridge human being, when I get to halftime of a basketball game and it's 10 o'clock p.m. and I start yawning in public, it's time to look at these conferences and these tip-offs, because I can't. The NBA will forever pay for their crimes for putting a team east of the Mississippi in the West Coast. But whatever. This was a prime example of New Orleans gets all of the back end of being in the Western Conference and none of the positive, none of the good things, none of the early tip-offs because we're on the West Coast. You don't get none of that. So anyway, I'm off my soapbox. Nah, man, I'm all good. I was in the Smoothie King Center last night, man, and to say, you hear a lot of stories about like the city of New Orleans has play-in fatigue, and there might be some truth to that. But this city is yearning for playoff basketball, and it came out at full force yesterday. It was quite the scene in out there in the Smoothie King Center. And man, damn it, this team, man, this team. So I'm good on my side, man. How's everything on you?
Everything is blessed. It was murky there for a while.
A little murky, little tentative.
Things were about to get dark very quickly. But you're right, man. Your reward for an 8:30 tip yesterday is another 8:30 tip with OKC tomorrow night, even though they're not on the West Coast at all. But before we get too much into that game and into the game tomorrow, make sure you guys are following us on X, on Twitter, on IG, whatever you follow on the social. That's NO Basketball, no E. Make sure you're liking the episode below, and make sure you're subscribed to the channel as we cover this playoff run for the Pelicans. So you start things off, talk about last week, the loss to the Lakers to end the regular season. Then you go play the Lakers again in the first game of the play-in. We don't need to recap that game. We know what happened. Zion was on the verge of going Super Saiyan, going ridiculous. Patty Mahomes is tweeting Zion's going crazy. And then he scores his 40th point, ties the game with 3 minutes to go, pulls his hamstring. Pelicans lose the game. The couple things that kind of came from that, obviously B.I. struggled because he was getting back into rhythm, and that was his second game, and he wasn't there. And so Willie, which, a lot of people, asked me about, is like, how does B.I. not get in the game? I was like, he was bricking early in the game. So, like, I can't totally be mad at Willie because it was kind of right decisions. And the Pelicans ultimately end up losing that game. But it leads to a do or die, win or go home for the third time, try to beat the team you beat 5 times in a row, except this time without Zion Williamson. So Sacramento Kings come to the building. Again, you got to have a lot of confidence because you beat this team in very different iterations all throughout the season, both home and away, both ass whoopings, both close games. All of those things have transpired. So you start out this game, and you could tell there was a little bit extra, right, from Brandon Ingram. Like, you could try to see, even though the shots weren't necessarily going in right off the bat, like he kind of got to 50% at the end of the game. But right off the bat, you just saw that there was a little bit more attention to detail from the player who needed to be the best player on the floor, and he was that. So talk to me what you saw from Brandon Ingram, especially coming off a game where, again, he probably didn't feel great about sitting and watching his team lose with no Zion on the court and him being on the bench. What were your thoughts from BI in the Sacramento game? His approach, his mentality, his overall demeanor to start this game.
Man, this was a weight of the world game for Brandon Ingram. I cannot explain to you in how much weight was on this game for Brandon Ingram. When you think about from the organizational standard, from the organizational standpoint, when you think of the fan standpoint, when you think of the contract standpoint, when you think of the team building aspect, all of it fell on Brandon Ingram's shoulders the minute that Zion pulled that hamstring, because everyone knew, even it was a likely chance with Zion being the only one getting anything good, that you were going to lose that game. And so there was going to be a do or die, backs against the wall. You don't have Zion's, ungodly talent to bail you out. This has to be a Brandon Ingram game. And with the weight of a 49-win season, can you turn that clock and get that 50th win, and kind of get that last win with the weight of a like I said, the 49-win season, all of the things that the Pelicans have achieved was literally up for grabs. And Brandon Ingram, he answered the call. Like he answered the call, and he saved a lot of uncomfortable conversations to be had, about what this team is and what it can be. And it was Brandon Ingram doing things, the winning plays, right? You hear him talk about, post game, about, he talked about not seeing CJ's text message because he was so locked in. You hear him talk about how the organization, he understands what it means for this organization in particular, to go into the playoffs. He talked about that. He very open, very candid information from BI to look into the psyche of a person with a lot on their plate and a lot on their shoulders. But he came out and he made the right plays. He didn't force it. I think he pushed it, but he didn't force it. Like you wanted him to come out with the aggression, because he had to be the guy to drive this train and land it where, and land it where it needs to go. He had to be the guy, right? You got all of these contributions from all these other players, but it had to be BI, and BI was aware of that, because he talked about getting in foul trouble and him going to Willie Green and saying, "Hey, listen, you can't take me out because I have to be in the game. Like I have to control the game." And so he understood the moment, and he understood what was on his plate. And, big kudos to him for playing through contact and doing it on the defensive side of the ball, and making plays and scoring when the Pelicans needed him the most to score. And so it was a really good insight. I loved hearing BI talk after the game, because it was really a good insight into the mind of a guy with so much riding on his, on one particular game, where you wasn't going to be able to come back, the next night and make up for this one. This the way you made up for the Lakers. Like, this was it. If you didn't get this one, there was going to be a lot of ugly conversations and ugly questions knocking at the front door. And again, Brandon Ingram answered the call, and got his team over the hump and into the playoffs.
Yeah. I think you used the perfect word. He was in control, right? Like, he wasn't scoring 30, he wasn't scoring 40, but he had a pulse on the game at all particular times. Larry Nance talked about it in his post-game interview. He does a really good job of knowing when to attack and when to be aggressive versus when to get other people involved. And so this was kind of I don't want to say a weird game, but like a playoff field game where the Pels only shot 19 3-pointers, right? A lot of it was kind of ugly offense from here and there, but all season long, what have we talked about? The keys for the Pelicans to win any game or have a chance in any games are what? Hellacious defense, which they did. Paint to great, which they did. But this time they threw it through JV, who had 19 and 12. Again, we'll circle back to that. But then also moving the ball, right? Paint to great and assists. They had 29 assists. So even though the threes weren't there, because Mike Brown alluded to it after the game. They were trying to run CJ off the three-point line. They were trying to run Trey off the three-point line because that's how they got worked last week or 2 weeks ago in Sacramento. They tried to take away the threes. You still saw the ball movement. You still saw the forcing of defenses to collapse and then the ball swing. You still saw the hellacious approach, the diving on the ground. You still saw that piece. And anytime, and Willie Green said it after the game, even if the shots aren't going in and even if people are bricking, if you're playing defense, if you're rebounding, if you're winning the 50-50 ball, you always give yourself a chance to win. And going into this Thunder matchup, you're going to have to win that. You're going to have to win the scrappy plays because without Zion, they are a better team. Like they're the number one team in the West for a reason for that standpoint. So you are going to have to win all the sloppy and dirty plays that, again, the Pelicans have been winning in some of these games. So the other part about it, we've talked about it several times. You know, Larry Nance was huge in this game. You and I talked about it right before the game. Sabonis, even though Sabonis had a good game by his standards, is a good matchup for Larry because he's not like this 7'2" guy who can just out rebound you and just use his size. He's more of a tactician in terms of how he approaches the game, which matches up well with Larry. And so in this game, you saw Larry have an impact. You saw Najee have an impact. You saw Jose have an impact because Sacramento is not a big burly team. They are a team that revolves around skill, athleticism, and shiftiness, and the Pels can match up with that. From that, and that's why they beat them 6 times in this season. But all in all, it boils down to defense for me because when they start the game that way and they play that way from tip off, that is the differentiator that the Pelicans have. The offense has been up and down, but when they are at the best defensively, they can play with anybody. So,
yeah, let me interject there. I just want to talk about how the reinforcements for the Pelicans literally saved the season. Yeah. Because I tweeted about it and I want to make sure that I say it on this podcast, on the show. We give a lot of grief to Larry Nance. Like, you know, there are matchups where he is not the choice and he is thrust into the matchup and it shows, right? Like the Orlando game, the Chicago games. There are times where he is thrust into these matchups where he has no shot. He was absolutely phenomenal last night. He played the dunker position well. He was passing the ball in the middle of the floor. He was hustling and rebounding. And I think, you know, when you talk about matchups for Larry Nance, I think if you don't have a bruiser or a freakish athlete, that is where Larry Nance can shine. And so Sabonis is neither a bruiser, he's not a freakish athlete. And so you saw Larry Nance be able to do some of those things that make him so well. Jose and Najee were on full-on Dudley boys last night. It was incredible the way they came in and they just changed they changed everything about the game. Najee's whatever it is, the it factor. He has it. And Dykeman Najee was in full effect last night. He was up in De'Aaron Fox's face. Let me tell you something. I would guarantee, if you ask De'Aaron Fox, honestly, if you just be like, if you never have to play the Pelicans again in your life, would that make you a happy man? Like, I guarantee you he would say yes. Because it has always been when we remember De'Aaron Fox, the Pelican killer. Like before this iteration of the Pelicans, he used to come in and it used to be 40 points all together. We famously remember De'Aaron Fox turning the corner, hitting a fake no-look pass to Lonzo Ball and getting a floater to win the game, breaking the hearts of Pelicans fans in the Smoothie King Center. Very, very vividly remember that. But these collection of wing players, this ain't your daddy's Pelicans with Najee and Herb and Dyson. I mean, they were up in his grill, and he was so frustrated. He had his points, but they were hard and they were tough, and they made him more of a straight line scorer as opposed to somebody who can do a lot of different things on the floor. When you make him, hey, look, you're the only person scoring. All of the other people now, Malik Monk and Kevin Huerter are out, but nobody else is getting a touch because you're so hyper focused on scoring. That is how you put a team away. And so him, JV, those guys, they came and they supplemented Brandon Ingram and saved CJ, because again, another bad game for CJ with the lights on, which we'll talk about. Those guys saved them, and if it wasn't for those guys stepping up in key moments, JV being his dominant self, Trey Murphy hitting his shots, but specifically Jose, Larry, and Najee coming in and just changing the complexity of the game, and bringing energy, because the building was a very nervous energy. But once Najee and Jose started getting the juices flowing and getting everybody rolling, the Smoothie King Center came alive. You saw the Pelicans, their team basically came alive.
Right. So role players play better at home, finally. Right? Like they changed up. They practiced in the Smoothie King Center. The definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over, expecting a different result. They switched it up, and you got a different energy. I mean, the other thing you got to think about is Najee's playing for a contract, whether it's with the Pelicans or whether it's someone else. And so this is another opportunity for him to say, look how I played in a postseason game. And now you get at least 4 games to show what else you could do. But again, Jose, Larry, that is what they're there for. We talk about role players being able to win you a game. Well, that was a game where your role players won you the game. So I see it in the comments, so let's talk about it. So Zion, again, he was ruled out after the Lakers game. Will be reevaluated in 2 weeks. The worst of all time if you follow this Pelicans team. But we'll be reevaluated.
Contusions and reevaluated. Just take it out of the lexicon. No mas, right flag.
So like now you've got, again, the good thing about this series is that there are 2-day breaks in this first round. That's a good thing about the first round, that everybody got to play. So there are 2-day breaks, I think, in between games 1 or game 2 and then game 4, right? When you're going back to New Orleans. So that spreads out the games. But here's my thought. You and I, we talked about hamstrings. You never really know. Like, it's hard. You could think you're 100% and then you go out there and re-aggravate it. What are your thoughts on this? Should the Pelicans be in the mind frame of let's try to win or steal as many as we can on the road so we can get Z back this series? Or should they take the Josh Hart mind frame of, hey, this is who we got, this is who we're going to battle with, and this is who we got left, and this is what we got to win with? Where's your kind of head in on that? And then we just watched a player of significant value miss a lot of time and get thrown back into the action in a must-win game, and it didn't go well. How would you then reinsert Zion? Because if they get to the point where he can come back, that means the Pelicans won some game somewhere in the early part of this series. So that means they got some type of rhythm going. So then you run the risk of messing that up again. So like where's your thought process on the Zion injury and how that could either impact this series or something that they just push and hope that they make it to round 2?
Well, let me start by saying, in my heart of hearts, I don't think you see him. I don't think you see him anymore. I think you get the 2 weeks and you reevaluate him. And I've been around the Pelicans long enough to know that you should not say, okay, they're gonna reevaluate him in 2 weeks and he'll be ready to go. I will not give it. I will not do it. However, if you want any chance, all right, so I don't think he's doing it. I don't think he's coming back. But if you want any chance, you have to go all in to win game 1. Because I think if you go into OKC and you win game 1, it not only shows it gives the team a level of confidence, but like I could see Zion say, okay, like if we getting this to at least 5, all right. So if whatever he has in him, if there's any kind of Wolverine adamantium that he can, any kind of mindset that he can have where he can, maybe get out there and give you something, it would be from winning game 1, because then you get that belief of, okay, can we do this, right? And what's, because you're at least going to get, unless the Pelicans sweep them, you're at least going to get game 5. So I think that you go all in and win game one. You do whatever it takes. You play your damn hardest and try to win it. And it's a road game. And Willie said that they tried to make the home game a road game because they play better under. I don't know. I don't really. I see what he was trying to do, but like I think that could have been you could have did that some other time. I don't think that's the time to do that when the season is on the line. But anyway, so you go in there and you win that. So the hamstring is tricky. We don't know the grade that he has. I see people asking in the comments. We don't know the grade that he has. And the thing about hamstrings is I actually went to a men's league game to see my team play. And it went from, I was talking to a couple of guys about hamstrings and things like that. And they all say the same things. Like you wake up one day and it feels like hell. It feels like your leg is about to burn off and disintegrate. And then other days you wake up and you're like, I got a little pep. I can get to it. And so you just don't know. And so until you find out, how severe the strain is, and then, what is the actual medical status of the hamstring. You get the strain, but like how severe is it? I don't think you really can know. But again, it all comes down to how many can you win and how long can you prolong the series. And I think for me, if you want any shot, again, I don't think he's going to play, but if you want any shot at all, I think going in and winning game one and getting that belief going and maybe getting him Zion to say, okay, let's ramp, let's get this together. I don't want to use the RU word because I see it in the chat. That word, we don't like that word. But if he can start getting himself back and maybe, push himself, yes, that word right there, push himself to get to a spot where he might be able to come back, then I think it revolves around this game one tomorrow night.
Yeah, I think stealing one on the road is a have to have. Like you can't go down 0-2, especially the way you've been playing at home lately. I just think that would be tough. Now, OKC is a really tough team, and we'll talk about that matchup in a second. But I agree with you. I think you got to get one of those on the road, and OKC's been great at home this year, but you got to find a way. So you alluded to it. CJ McCollum's postseason struggles. On a scale of like 1 to 10, how concerned are you? Because in the 2-playing game, he averages 8 points. I did not stutter. I didn't say 18. 8 points. And
so how much is 33 million divided by 8? It's like how many points per million?
And over his playoff and play-in last year experience with the Pelicans, it's not great. He's shooting 39% from the field, 33% from the 3-point line. It's been really inefficient basketball. Like yesterday, again, you could just see the frustration on his face, the way the shots just had no chance. Some of the shots he was shooting, like you immediately knew they were off from that end. So like with no Zion and JV being the only other player who has as much playoff experience as CJ on the roster, and you're going against the number 1 team in the West, what's your concern level 1 to 10 with CJ? And can he turn around? Because honestly, if he doesn't, the Pelicans are going to be in trouble.
Yeah. So the good thing, I guess not the good thing, but the not so bad thing about playing the Thunder is that they have little playoff experience either. And so this is going to be, everybody, like Brandon Ingram is going to have a lot more playoff experience than like some of the other players on the team on OKC. And so I think this won't be they won't be leaning on experience to beat the Pelicans. It will be X's and O's and we're just better than you. So it won't be that. However, I am very, very, very concerned about CJ McCollum. And the crazy part about being concerned about CJ McCollum is that he could go out tomorrow and have a 30-point game. There's just such a variance between when he plays in the regular season and when the lights get bright. And it's crazy because he's been out of his mind the last month of the season. And just soon as the calendar turned from, the regular season to the postseason or whatever you want to call it, the playing games, his shot has left him. And so the thing about CJ is that he is a guy that has a lot of experience on the court, but there are times when his shot isn't falling that if like you squint, he looks like a rookie or a young player getting up like bad shots and things like that, trying to like break through it. And what it does, I call it hero ball. Like everybody, I call it his hero ball. When he gets into these hero ball situations, the other teams know it, right? And they know it, and they play him towards it. And so CJ has to find a way to get through this, because again, with Zion, they were going to need his catch and shoot ability to win games, strictly because like Trey Murphy's going to play. And then if Trey Murphy's the only, there's nobody else who's like catching and shooting at the clip of CJ McCollum and Trey Murphy, who happen to play minutes for the Pelicans. Those, they don't play. And I would not, I don't know if I would not, but I'm very wary of Willie Green throwing Matt Ryan and Hawk out there, and it turns into Kyra and JV of Jackson last year, where they just was like this. They were like, what is happening? I don't want that to happen. So CJ's going to have to figure this out. And we called CJ the MVP of the regular season, and I still stand on that. I saw people tweet me. I still stand on that. CJ was incredible in the regular season. But there are issues when the lights turn bright. And those have to be rectified. And so the Pelicans have any shot, now that Zion is not playing, if they have any shot at all, CJ is going to have to get through this, and he's going to have to contribute. I don't know. I saw somebody tweet me earlier. I don't know if it was, he played so many games and played so many minutes and now he's worn down. I don't think that's it, because the shots, his shoulder sure isn't hurting, because he's getting the shots up. It's just they're short, they're left, they're right, they're rimming out. All of those floaters that he was hitting, those weird angle floaters that he was hitting, they're not going in, and it's visually, he gets visually frustrated. And when you're not scoring, and you're also now the target on defense, because they bring CJ up in the pick and rolls and they are attacking him relentlessly, that plays into the psyche, right? Like there's a lot going on. And so he has to get through this. He has to get through these shooting slumps and whatever demons that he's battling, because the Pelicans are going to need him to have any shot against OKC, especially OKC at full strength. When they got it all firing between Chet and Shea and Jalen Williams, and it's just, you're gonna need firepower in this series. And CJ not being able to provide it, and also being hunted on defense, it's just not conducive to the Pelicans winning a game, let alone the series.
Yeah, OKC doesn't have very many holes. They're one of the few teams that finished top 5 in both offense and defense this particular season, which is a wild thing to say considering they have the same average age as the UNC Tar Heels that just got knocked out of the NCAA tournament.
Crazy.
But you look at this matchup, and again, it's hard to take anything from the regular season series because Zion didn't play one of those games. That was the only game that the Pelicans lost substantially, and JV only played a small amount of minutes, which again we'll talk about. The other game didn't have Brandon Ingram that the Pelicans won. The other game didn't have Brandon Ingram that they played a couple weeks ago that the Pelicans lost at home. Go figure from that stuff. So it's hard to look at the regular season and take very much from it. But what would be some of the main keys when you look at what the problem that OKC presents? Obviously, we know Shea. Obviously, we know J-Dub. We know Jay Will. Obviously, Chet, and what, again, if it wasn't Victor, he would probably win Rookie of the Year. All the pieces that OKC possess. But when you look at just the game in itself and the game within the game, what are the keys that you're looking at to ultimately just give the Pelicans a shot without their best player?
Well, we'll just get right into it. First things first, you have to feature JV. You have to feature JV. Chet cannot be allowed to vaguely guard JV because you aren't including him, and then also bring JV out to the 3-point line and shoot and score on him. You just won't get the best version of JV from that. And so you have to feature him. Chet has to guard him for the entire time they are on the floor. Like, you have to feature him over and over and over again in order to A, maybe get Chet in foul trouble and out the game, or B, let JV just dominate him. He's substantially bigger than Chet, and so you have to feed into that. They did it yesterday against Sabonis. They allowed him to cook. They gave him the ball. They reposted. They reposted over and over again, and so it was a game plan to get JV involved, and they need to incorporate that against OKC. Another thing is that last game they played, I think they did a fairly decent job defending OKC, but Josh Giddey had like the shooting game of his life. And so I think that is something that the Pelicans should lean more into once again, because I would venture to bet that Josh Giddey doesn't hit another 6 threes in a game. And even if he does, like if that's is very similar to what I was talking about when the Pelicans were playing. I can't remember who they were playing, but I was saying that if they're gonna if the game, it was the Suns, and instead of Devin Booker and instead of Kevin Durant shooting, it was Nurkic and Grayson Allen. And okay, Grayson Allen hits a couple of threes, right? Nurkic gets a couple scores. But as long as it's those two guys shooting, if you want to abandon all your offense and keep going to Grayson Allen and Nurkic, go for it. I think the Pelicans should feel the same exact way. If Shea is going to keep kicking out to an open Josh Giddey and Josh Giddey shoots 10 threes in a game, I think you have a much better shot than trying to play Shea and Jalen Williams one-on-one and hoping to God that Herb and Dyson can stop that, and then you're trying to stop everybody else. I think that's a recipe for Shea to average 31 in the series, which I think he's going to do. I think he's going to come close to that anyway. But you have to devise a game plan and stick to it, even when Josh Giddey hits a couple shots, or if JV gets beat on a pick and roll by Shea. You don't immediately take him out and not go back to it. Stick with your game plan. Feed JV. Allow these other guys to beat you. Not Shea and not Jalen Williams. I think those are the basic aspects that you have to have in the game plan to give yourself a shot. And then last but not least, like you have to shoot the 3 ball and you have to make them. Like you have to make the open threes. We saw a lot of open shots, especially in that Lakers game, where guys who are usually good shooters just wasn't able to connect in a way that you needed them to connect. And so you're going to get some open shots if you play through JV and if you play your paint to great offense. You're going to get open shots, and you are going to have to hit them because they have a lot of good defenders. Their best players are two-way players. Shea is a two-way player. Jalen Williams is a two-way player. Chet Holmgren is a two-way player. And Lou Dort is one of the best wing defenders, in the NBA, right on the short list of wing defenders in the NBA. And so they have a lot of good defenders up there, and they play defense together on a string, anchored by Chet Holmgren back there. So you're going to have to hit those open shots. And you're going to be if you have a chance to get that shot up, don't be hesitant. I'm talking to Herb Jones. Like, don't be hesitant on those shots. Get them up because you're going to get those open shots. And if you don't at least take them to keep the defense honest, then that's just going to cause even more paint presence for BI and CJ or JV or whoever to do anything. So, yes, I think you have to play through JV. I think you have to allow Josh Giddey and the others to shoot, build that wall in front of Shea and Jalen Williams, and then shoot and make the open threes.
I couldn't agree more. It's crazy that a week ago you were staring at maybe Minnesota, maybe Denver, and maybe OKC. And you were saying, I probably want OKC of that mix. And now you're like, man, that team is really damn good when you look at their season in a totality. Obviously, you had Zion then, but the principle is the same, right? You have to control the paint. OKC has done a really good job of not allowing points of paint. Both them and the Pelicans are very good at deterring people in the paint. But all in all, that's going to be your biggest advantage. So I couldn't agree with you more. In terms of 3-point percentage, I think this series is going to come down to who can hit the most open threes. The OKC finished number 1 in the NBA in 3-point percentage. The Pelicans finished 5th. OKC only shot 34 a game. The Pelicans shot 33 a game. So they don't shoot it very often. But to your point, you cannot lose this series because you just let Shea go on the island and you trusted her. You can't lose that way. Every other team, now since Zion is not in the equation, is going to say, if we lose to the Pelicans, it won't be because of Brandon Ingram, right? The Pelicans have to apply that same mentality when it comes to Shea. And so that's going to lead to open shots, like you mentioned, to all the others, right? And are they going to be able to step up in the moment and make those shots? So outside of controlling the paint and the three-point line, I think the number one key to this entire series is who can value the basketball. The Pelicans and OKC are top 10 in assist to turnovers. They're both top 10 in the least amount of turnovers per game, but they're also first and third in steals in the NBA. And so both of them like to turn you over. Both of them score off turnovers, and both of them control the ball. So in a game with two inexperienced teams for the most part, it's going to come down to who can control the ball, who can take care of the ball, who can make the right decision, who can make the timely decision, and all that. You just saw a game, the Cavs versus Orlando, which again, Orlando had a really good matchup with the Cavs all season. They came out the gates giving the ball to the other team. They're a young, inexperienced team. It's going to come down to that in the series. Shea is really good at getting his hands in the passing lanes. Jalen Williams is really good. Lou Dort, all of those players are really good from that perspective. So how can you make sure you're not fumbling the ball away like you did versus the Lakers? Because if you do, you're going to pay on the other end. And if you get down big in this one, especially without a Zion Williamson, I don't know if this is the team you want to play catch up with from that standpoint. So in terms of taking care of the ball, winning the three-point line, and winning the paint, that's going to tell the tale of what this series. Now, most of the advantages are in OKC's favor. Like, they have multiple candidates, whether it's MVP, Rookie of the Year, Coach of the Year, six-man, it doesn't matter. Like, they got a candidate for everything this season. So most of the, especially with no Zion, most of the things are in their favor. Tell me something without Zion that is in the Pelicans' favor. And that if they're able to conquer this and play to their outside of just JV, what are some of the things the Pelicans have going for them as they enter this uphill battle versus a very good team?
I think the one that jumps off the screen is rebounding. The Thunder are not a great rebounding team. Part of it is because of Chet, being slightly built, but part of it is because they run basically all wings and guards and Chet up there. And so nobody is really crashing. They're trying to run back and get in there. Whereas you got JV down there. Trey Murphy has been playing, been crashing the board something serious. Brandon Ingram has shown you that he has a propensity to rebound. Dyson Daniels is a good rebounder. Even Jose gets in there and gets rebounded. So
CJ too?
You have to CJ as well. Like, you have to dominate the boards. I would say particularly the defensive boards, because you need to end the possessions as quickly as you can from the OKC. You start giving them opportunities for rebounds and spray out three-pointers, to their guys, then they can do that, right? Isaiah Joe can kill you with shots like that. Shea, Jalen Williams, those guys can kill you with stuff like that. And also what offensive rebounding does, it gets teams hype, right? That's the energy that they get. Buildings get energized from offensive rebounds, kickouts to threes and things like that. And so with a team that is inexperienced, one thing you want to do is cut that home court advantage off so that they're not getting what they're losing in experience, they're getting from that home court advantage up there in Loud City. You want to get that out the way. And one way to do that is to end the possessions and dominate on the boards. And so when you have guys that can hit the boards the way the Pelicans do, obviously you're missing Zion, one of the best offensive rebounders in the game. And you're missing that force and all that he plays for. You still have the rebounding advantage by a metric ton. And so you have to make sure that OKC feels that advantage and make sure that advantage is shown in the stat book every single game. That has to be something that they cannot lose, non-negotiable. You have to rebound the ball, and I would say particularly defensive rebounds to end possessions, and get the ball out of Shea and Jalen Williams' hands as quick as possible.
Yeah, if there was one thing that this team had a hole in, they're 27th in rebound. So you're absolutely right. If you can control the boards, you can somewhat control the game and the pace of the game. OKC plays one of the most up-tempo team now in the playoffs. Who knows? Because the game slows down, but they're one of the most up-tempo teams in the NBA. If you're able to get that board, if you're able to kind of dictate from that standpoint, I agree with you. I think that's an advantage. The other two things kind of fall hand in hand. They're the bigger team, right? OKC is not a very big team. They are very athletic, very youthful, but they don't have a lot of size in that. And so you saw it in the Kings game, right? Like you even saw a nasty Alvin Kamara stiff arm from Larry Nance that didn't get called. Like you have to be the aggressors. You have to assert yourself. I'm looking at Najee. I'm looking at Dyson. I'm looking at Hurt. I'm looking at all these guys that you have the physical advantage from that standpoint. Because again, everywhere else, they're probably going to beat you. So if you don't assert your dominance from that standpoint, it could be a very short series. The other thing is the thing staring everybody in the room, and the reason why nobody's running to Vegas and throwing all their money at OKC. They have no experience, right? Like Shea has a couple of playoff games under his belt. Gordon Hayward, I don't know if he's going to be in the rotation or not. Isaiah Joe, Lou Dort, they have a couple games. Outside of that, nobody else in their rotation has any experience in the playoffs, and I get it. You could look like world beaters in the regular season, but when them lights come on in the post, you just never know how a player is going to react one way or the other. And so CJ's been there. JV's been there. B.I. had a series where he was the guy in that scenario. You have that advantage, so you can't come out and play very slow and no energy and kind of hope that you stay in the game, because OKC will run you out the building if you do that. You have got to put the pedal to the metal and make them breathe a little bit like, whoa, this is playoff basketball. You have to bring the intensity. And so if they're able to do that, again, you're going to be the underdog in every game, whether it's home or whether it's away, especially without Zion. So if you don't do the small things, if you don't do the things to your advantage, again, this could be a very short series. But again, the Pelicans have opportunity, which for a while there last week, I don't know if that was going to be the case, but they have an opportunity to continue their season. Brandon Ingram stared in the mic and said, that's the team that sent me home last year, and he looks like he's got it on his mind. So we shall see tomorrow at 8:30 Central, which is insane. I'm not sure why. The Clippers were right there, but 8:30 tomorrow, the Pelicans will again play in the playoffs, not the postseason. The playoff, the Pelicans invitational play-in has come and gone. They are in the playoffs tomorrow, game one. They've got to come out with the tone on it. What do you got left for the people as we start this round one matchup?
As always, you never know what people are going through, so give someone a smile today. Yeah, this is what you play hard for, right? Like it ended, the end of the season ended in a kind of way, right, with all those home losses and everything. But and Zion getting hurt. But you're here. And so now all of that is behind you, all of the home losses, the regular season. Look, the Pelicans, I don't expect the Pelicans to do this, but look at how the Miami Heat approached the playoffs. They say they last season they sucked from the three-point line. Nobody could hit a shot. All of them, Eric Spoelstra came out and he said he went to his team and he ripped up all of the stat sheets. Everything is gone. Now it's a whole new season with new expectations and new ways to cement a legacy. And so you can go out there and you come out and punch first. You bring the intensity. You don't wait to get punched in the mouth first. I always say win the race to the first timeout. That is always a good tone setter when the opposing team has to call the timeout first, especially on the road. And so you want to go in there and you want to come with the intensity and punch first, and get these guys on their heels, and see what they're made of in the playoffs. And so it's gonna be tough. It's gonna be tough. Don't think the Pelicans are going to win this easily by any means, but that's why you play the game. And so their tip-off is tomorrow at 8:30. Abolish the West Coast. I can't hashtag put it. we got to do something about these 8:30 tip-offs. I'm not a fan of them. But as always, follow myself at Garrick_Rattler. Follow my brother at Raphael_Rattler. Follow the page at NO Basketball No E. And most importantly, subscribe to New Orleans Basketball, and we'll see you guys next time.